Hello friends, this video is part of series of videos where we looking into SQL Server transactions. So far, we have discussed about basics of transactions and ACID properties of the transactions. Then we looked at concurrency, which is one of the ACID properties of transaction. Today, we are going to look at how concurrency control is implemented in SQL Server. SQL Server uses two main techniques to implement concurrency control. One is locking and the other one is versioning. First, let's take a look at locking technique. Locking is the traditional mechanism SQL Server uses to isolate transaction. When a transaction accesses data, SQL Server places locks on data to prevent other transactions from making conflicting changes. Locking type and granularity decide the effect of the lock and the scale of the lock. For example, let us consider an employee table. Let's say we want to access employee ID 35. So we have a query like this. When we run this, SQL Server places a lock on that particular row. So no other transaction knows this row is getting used. There is several types of locks. When we read data, like in our example, SQL Server places shared lock. But if SQL Server want to update a row, it plays exclusive type of lock. There are also many other kind of locks which we will discuss in future advanced modules. Then we need to consider granularity of the lock. If SQL Server just read one row, it can just place lock on row level. But say SQL Server want to read the whole table, then it need to escalate or promote the lock to table level. In other words, SQL Server locks the whole table, so no other transaction can interfere with the records in the whole table. There are many levels of granularity. For example, row level and page level, which locks several rows in single page, and then table level. There are more which we will discuss later modules. Higher the granularity, more rows and data get locked. Hence, more blocking issues can occur. Therefore, when choosing granularity of the lock, SQL Server get very careful not to block more than it requires. Next, let's take a look at versioning technique. Versioning is multi-version concurrency control or MVCC approach. Instead of locking data for readers, SQL Server maintains row version, a multiple version of a row in TempDB, allowing readers to see a consistent snapshot of the data. When a row is modified, SQL Server keeps an older version in TempDB so that reader can still access the version valid at the start of their transaction or query. For example, in our employee table, if employee ID 35 get modified by a one-off transaction, copy of original version of that row gets stored in TempDB, so the other transaction can continue to access unmodified version. This is much recent technique, and isolation level using versioning are read committed snapshot or RCSI and snapshot isolation, which go in short form SI. Versioning helps reduce blocking and deadlocks, improve concurrency. Okay, now today in this video we have looked at two concurrency control techniques which SQL Server uses. And let us meet again in another video discussing furthermore advanced levels of transaction in SQL Server. Thank you for watching.